We are live now, Craig.
We're live. Okay, guys, I'm just, for those of you who tuned in a little early, we had some issues last week, so we decided to start a little early. I'm not going to start painting till about 12. Talk a little bit, did a little bit of a quick sketch with a little mechanical pencil. And I think I'm right, but I'm not sure. Until I mass in tones, I can't tell. We've got a figure sitting here. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. It's ambient lighting. There's not strong lighting except in the building behind. So I'm going to be using a lot of what we call pattern painting. There is, you can see, a stronger light, not a strong sunlight, but from here hitting this plane. This plane's a little lighter than this plane, and then it eventually goes darker. I had the good fortune of being able to paint this particular fountain, no figure in it, while I was on location in Florence, Italy, doing one of our summer study abroads.
I'm not seeing it live.
Okay. And Anna's not seeing this live, so hopefully somebody's getting it. In any event, this is kind of what I call pattern painting. I'm not painting strong light and shadow. I'm painting patterns of dark and light, and then modeling subtleties within those areas. So the strongest light in the whole piece is in the building behind. So if one were to squint their eyes at this piece of subject matter, whether you're on location or whether you're looking at your photo reference, you're going to see strong bright lights here, a little bit of lights right in here. The rest of it's going to be kind of mid-tone to dark. No strong light on the figure, although we can see deeper shadows in here. We see darker areas. I also like to analyze my images. My word, I'm not sure if this is coming out or not. I know Anna's not getting it, and we sure had technical difficulties last week. It looks like we're having them again. Not sure why.
Looks live on my page here. I'll take another look here.
Okay. Well, we're getting feedback that it's good on one page, but not good on another. So I'm not sure what's going on. I'm just going to keep talking. But I'm not going to really do any painting until we get this thing resolved. I'll just talk in case some of you were able to catch this. In any event, what we're doing here is we're going to paint kind of darks and mid-tones, and I'll probably pop these lights in relatively soon. I'm painting on a pretty light colored board. It is a piece of hardboard that's I've hit a little gesso on, and then I took a little brown and blue to gray it down, so it's kind of a gray brown, pale gray brown color. Now, just so you understand the value of what I'm painting on, that's white. So you can see, that it's pretty light, but it's still darker than the white. Now, the backside of this is deep brown. It's not black, it's deep brown. So if you look at that, you can see I have a lot more room to move into my dark areas than I do into my light areas. All right. I always like to understand the darkest element, the lightest element, and the most colorful element in any painting that I'm going to do. Those are the first three things that I look for. Then I look for spatial breakup. I like the spatial breakup of this photo. I shot it while I was painting. I was standing back much further, and I shot it because I liked, this is about a third. This is about a third, and this is a little less than half, although I made it closer to half mistakenly, by the way, just because I sketched it up pretty quickly. And there's a little bit of perspective going on down here. Very important that as I work in those areas, that I understand that any perspective indication I do needs to be correct. Now I can take a ruler.
I've seen it twice now.
Fully live now.
And I can set this ruler down here and see that my angles down in here are going to be something like this. If I'm going to hit. So that gives me a little bit of a perspective. The angle here is more like this, which I've already kind of indicated. So I'd probably given a little bit more foreground. I never mind giving too much foreground, particularly when I'm pulling the viewer into the the painting, because I'll tell you why. A foreground allows the viewer to enter the painting. Perspective gives a sense of believability to the space that's going on, because beyond these, there's not a lot of perspective in this. However, there is architecture, rustic architecture, but it is architecture, meaning the fountain. So that part is going to take a little bit
Hey, Greg,
longer.
just sorry to interrupt, but we are good and live now. Thank you very much for bearing with us. We're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We find out we're actually live, as you can see. For those of you that weren't here when I was discussing I did a quick pencil sketch. I think I got my proportions pretty good. I'm not positive. I can never tell until I get, as I've stated many times, mass. So we've got a few little things. I kind of roughed it in with a mechanical pencil as opposed to drawing with a brush. But I've got enough in here where I can start massing in. As I mass in, I can begin to assess how correct my drawing is. All right. So now, again, I've mentioned this to several people. If I am doing a studio painting, I am probably going to spend a lot more time on the sketch. If I'm doing a plein air painting, I'm probably not going to do anything even that remotely refined. That's not the way everyone works. That is the way I work. All right. I need to really clarify that, because people go, well, is that what you're supposed to do? It's what I do. And that's all I can talk to. There are people that do much more refined drawings, and then there are people that just start smashing paint around and don't even worry about the drawing. So let's start with that area right there that's the lightest. That is almost a pure Naples yellow light. So let's see what that looks like. Looks pretty good. I think I'm going to add just a tad of white to it. I have no medium whatsoever. We'll just kind of scrubble it a little. Scrubble. Scrubble's a new word. I think I just came up with a new artistic term. We're going to scrub this in kind of in a dry brush fashion, so it's not real gooey and wet, but it is not thin either. All right. Probably a little more colorful than I wanted. I don't mind it. It doesn't bother me. There.
The surface you're working on again?
The surface I'm working on is a piece of hardboard. It is gessoed, and then I took a little bit of brown and a little bit of blue, brown meaning umber, blue meaning ultramarine, and kind of push that into it while it was wet, so that I ended up with kind of a gray, brown, pale gray brown. And I did show this. That's white. So you can see I'm quite a ways from white. Now I'm going to show you the backside of this, which is not black, but it's pretty dark. That's a very dark. That's almost like an umber. So, and it means I still have room to go black. So you can see I've got a pretty good tonal surface to work off of, which is pretty much what I like. I like to work off light neutral tones. I've got a good friend of mine that works off of black. So what I tell you is what I do. It's not what everyone does. Keep that in mind. It works for me. Hopefully it'll work for you too. The other thing is, from a teaching point of view, which I guess these demos are kind of like a teaching point of view, for lack of a better way of stating it. From a teaching point of view, I always like to show what I believe is the easiest way of working, not necessarily the only way. So for whatever that's worth, keep that in mind. It's what I consider the easiest way. And I think that's the best way to show people. I mean, there's a lot of ways. I could have just started smacking in tones and, you know, eventually made it work from those tones. So now I'm going to go off to the right here, and I'm going to do that kind of, so I can take the same color. It's kind of orange. I didn't lay out a red. The only red I've laid out is alizarin crimson, because I don't see a lot of red in this. So I just threw a little touch of alizarin crimson and yellow ochre into that mixture that I was just dealing with. Now this may be a little too dark. No, it's not. Huh. Do I sound surprised? I am. That's why. Okay. So we're going to lay this sloppy stuff in right off the bat here. And then I'm going to switch over to my number 12, rosemary flat. Once I get all this kind of cool stuff laid in like this, just so I get these kind of simple background tones in. This is, by the way, I don't think I explained, this is an area in Florence called Santo Spirito, and it is on the opposite side of the Arno than the most of the city is, and it's quite a popular place. There's a beautiful little fountain there. There's a square, a lot of restaurants, things of that nature. So we've got that stuff in, and I didn't do this, but we'll do it right now, just so I get that kind of in there. I need some tones, some background tones. Now, I'll tell you why I like to do these background tones. It's because it gives me a sense of how dark I need to go as I'm beginning to develop other areas. But I've mentioned this many, many times. I always do background first, always. It's not necessarily the way I learned, but it's the way that over a period of years I've found works best for me. Maybe for you, maybe not for you. Okay, so I've got my wonderful rosemary number 12. It's pretty beat up, but I love them. They last, they work. And we're gonna continue along with all this stuff. Now I'm gonna start to get some of these dark masses in. The foliage, I can work in like 2 tones of green. First of which will be umber and sap green together. And I'm gonna add a little bit of medium because I want it to flow quickly. Right? A little bit more sap. I don't care if I'm going to worry a little bit about these edges just by using this brush in such a way where I'm painting more with this part than the tip. You can get, out of a brush like this, my God, you can get some, this is about the right color, by the way. So for this little area back in here. So
What's the number 12 what?
Number 12, flat. I think it's an ivory, if I'm not mistaken. I use a lot of I haven't found a brush that I don't like of theirs. So, but I know I have a lot of the flats because I really use them, and the ivories. So we're going to kind of come down. We're just going to abstractly get this in here. And push and give some erratic qualities to some of these edges, partly because I'm doing it quickly. But truthfully, if I were doing this plain, I'd be doing the same thing. I'm not doing this. Part of the reason I'm doing it is time frame. And I've mentioned so many times that these live painting sessions that I do are more like they're more like giant studies, meaning that if I were to do a studio painting, people have asked, because I've had people write me after seeing some of these saying, "Well, you paint so fast, you must knock those out in this amount of time." Only when I'm demonstrating. When I'm working in the studio and I'm working on paintings, I take as long as I need. Sometimes it might be 3 days. Sometimes it might be 7 days. All those days necessarily won't be spent painting. They might be spent analyzing, thinking, just making decisions. But it's not just a matter of, when you do this is very intuitive type painting. In other words, meaning that what I'm doing is I'm using a lot of the knowledge I've acquired over the years and just putting these marks down, trying to make it all work. And part of the reason is what you're trying to do, what I'm trying to do is show things, show maybe a way of thinking, thus the narration. That's why I talk all the way through it. I don't talk all the way. If it's just me in the studio, trust me, I do talk to myself at times, but it's usually yelling at me and telling me how stupid I am and the things that I'm doing wrong. So I don't sit there and say, well, now I'm putting down a green that I don't do that. I only do that when I demonstrate. It's from the many years of teaching. That's so, and I'm basically saying that because I know people have asked questions about that. So let's get this in here. I feel like I'm wasting time. Oh, I like that mixture, huh? I don't know if it works, but
What was the mixture?
I just mixed some of the green brown into that Naples that I had down there already, and it came out pretty good. I kind of like the color. Isn't that amazing? Sometimes stuff happens. I could use the common vernacular, but I won't. And it works for you. And sometimes as you're working, it works against you. It's just the name of the, okay, we're gonna let's push, get some nice, interesting edges. You see, I'm using my brush. I'm using my brush almost 100% on the side. I'm not painting on the tip. That I know I can bring control to things the minute I switch over and go using the actual, this part. I can use a lot more control that way. But I like energy in my painting as the underpainting. And so that's basically what you see me doing, creating some energy and getting some effects that I wouldn't probably get if I spent all that time. Well, it's interesting, but it's not what I want. If I spent all that time doing just, trying to be perfect. Again, I want to be, for lack of a better word, I want to be more perfect at the end than I am at the beginning, because that's where the control comes in. That's where you pull things together. And for any of you that have had the opportunity to see me do a bunch of these, you might notice that very often in the beginning, it looks like chaos. And hopefully at the end, I bring enough of it together to make sense out of it.
Didn't you say controlled chaos?
Controlled chaos. Somebody came up with that. I would like to say it was me, but it wasn't.
I thought that was
One of you guys, one of these guys that watch came up with the idea of controlled chaos. And I'm stealing it from you. I'm going to call it mine from now on. So forgive me for using your words. I mean, really, even all forms of painting to a degree are that, except maybe photorealism. Photorealism is where you want to be ultra precise right from the beginning. I've done a few photorealistic paintings. I don't know that I've done them very well because my heart is not necessarily into it, but it's educational and it's fun. And you learn what you don't want to do by doing it. Oh, there's another good one, huh? Just came up with that right now off the top of my head. That's really the only reason you find out. You go, hey, I don't want to do that again. Sure didn't enjoy that. I've had students say, I don't want to paint that. As a student, I tried everything. I tried stuff I would have never thought of. As an illustrator, that's what you paint. You paint stuff that you never thought of. You paint stuff that's assigned to you. And so, best stroke I made right there, man. There's another good one. Crap. 2 in a row. Well, two's where it stops.
Why do you think it was a good
I like it's because it's got a super spontaneity. It's like these are a little contrived, but I notice if I push and lift up, I just learned that. If I do this and lift up on it, I get these interesting qualities. Because leaves don't have the uniqueness. I'll tell you where I learned that. I don't know that I learned it well, but I'll tell you where I stole it from. Is Andrew Wyeth. Andrew Wyeth's watercolors. If you ever have the opportunity to see him in person, you will notice that sometimes if you get up close, you go, well, that's a great tree. And all of a sudden you get up close and you just see it's a super sloppy, aggressive stroke. But the qualities and the way they interact, or the way that they kind of work against some of the other elements in the painting, makes it just wonderful, spectacular. So you can learn a lot by looking at it. You don't see it in looking at his work in print. At least I didn't. You might be more astute than I am, but you do. If you ever have the opportunity to see it in person, it's a marvel to see how just a stroke can feel like foliage.
So Gail said she's been watching a number of the Friday painting sessions. Do you prefer to start at the top and work down, or do you ever paint all over for the underpainting?
You know, it's you're not the first person to ask that question, and I'm sure you won't be the last. Generally, it's something I hadn't noticed. I paint pretty much from the background forward, so I don't think of top to bottom. However, in most instances, the things that are furthest back are at the top, and it's something that other people have noticed top to bottom. I never noticed that until it was pointed out to me, and then I started thinking about it. And I went, well, you think about it. If you paint mountains, mountains aren't down here, and then the house is up here. Mountains are here, comes forward. So and what's behind the mountains? Sky. Where is the sky? At the top, not the bottom. So generally, it does work out where it goes top to bottom, but it is not the thought of top to bottom. It is the thought of background to foreground. And that's the way that I work. And that goes back to something that a teacher of mine once said, is you set the stage and bring the actors in. And I've used that line before, I think, in some of these demos, meaning that you set the stage, and the stage is the environment. The environment generally has to do more with the background than it does with anything else. And then you come forward. So that, if I look at that abstractly, compared to what I have in my reference, it's similar, right? It's similar. So let's leave it alone. Let's just say that's good enough. Yeah, repeat after me. That's good enough. I'm going to switch over to a number. I think this is number 8. Now that is a super good looking, clean rosemary. Look at that thing. Look at that thing compared to the other one. I've been taking good care of that baby. Okay. Let's start to get the fountain in. I mean, there are other elements in the background. There's this little thing. Maybe I'll get that in. What do you say? Let's use some titanium buff, a little blue, white, and it's too colorful. So, meaning I got too much blue, so I bring some other color into it, something warm. Oh my gosh, whenever I bring alizarin into it, it just goes crazy. So we want to hit that right there. That's exactly what I did not want. That's exactly what I did not want. Might as well show you when you mess up, huh? Every time, I have people say, well, whenever you put something down, it's always right. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's right sometimes. And in the demos, particularly these live painting sessions, you get to see the crummy mistakes I make, along with some of the decent choices. You'll never, I'll try and tell you when I do something really bad. That was really bad, by the way. Now I'm doing something that's a little bit more in control. And that's, you see me be a lot more precise with the way I'm yielding the brush. Yet this, now why did I cover that? That's kind of stupid. Okay. And then it gets a little light on the top of that. So I can bring a little white maybe, and maybe a little Naples into that. And right up here, the top, it's a little tint. And what it is they're selling goods back here, probably selling t-shirts or something along that line back here. So there we go. I don't want to spend too long on it. You just have to put it in there and say, well, that's good enough, I'm right. And you kind of, it goes back to that assume you're right, paint like you know what you're doing and assume you're wrong. It's that same strategy. This is the backside of that. I kind of like the wet into wet character of that stroke. Okay. Let's leave it. I just don't have time. Now let's start on this part of the fountain, and then we'll get down to the dark. We'll start on the top. Now these darks are almost as dark as that. So I'm going to take the umber and the blue together. I'm going to add just a hint of one of my whites. I have unbleached titanium, and I have titanium. I didn't use a radiant today. I used the titanium. And if you ask me why, I won't be able to tell you because I just don't know. It's what I picked up. Okay. So there's the shadow part of the top of that fountain, which is damn near as dark as the trees. If I need to add a little, now I painted this on location. One of the things that I noticed on location is the water cast made this very aqua. This is being blocked from the water, but this isn't. So I'm going to do what I painted in location from memory and make that a lot more aqua. First, we're going to get the dark in. You know, I feel like when I teach workshops, a lot of you guys that maybe have taken some of my figurative, particularly plein air workshops are different, but the figurative workshops I play, I keep my iPod going all the time, so we have some music. We don't do it here because this is being broadcast, we'd have to pay royalties. And so, and I won't sing for you because you would all tune out. You would definitely tune out. Get my son or my sister over here and they could sing to you, and then you would say, okay, that's pretty good. But I've been very gifted with a poor voice. Or as Anna's dad used to say, geez, I wish I could sing.
No, we always wanted me to
He
sing.
used to say that to Anna. He said, I wish you could sing. And Anna would reply, me too. I wish I could sing too. But thankfully, there's a lot of great singers out there that we enjoy. And both of us enjoy a lot of it. I mean, I'm a child of the 60s. So I kind of love that old 60s sound of combination of rock and roll and folk music. And then even pre-60s, the wonderful crooners. And that's why I'm kind of starting a series of my own paintings of crooners. Dean Martin and
Named our daughter
Sinatra.
after-
Pardon?
So we named our daughter after Joan Baez.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's true. We are a really child of the 60s. I'll tell you what we did. Anna just reminded me, we named our daughter after a Joan Baez song. And I met her in person one time, having her sign a CD that I just bought. And I mentioned that we named her after a Joan Baez. Of course, this Joan Baez song was about a guy. So, but that's okay. Sasha can be a guy's name or a girl's name.
Mitchell wants to know if you ever paint using a monitor with a reference photo rather than a print. And I know, I think we've talked about that.
Yeah, I've done that in Italy, in my apartment in Italy a couple times when I was doing study abroad. I keep threatening to, and you know, I'm just lazy. That's really what it comes down to. I could say a whole bunch of stuff, you guys, but I have not. I've got a monitor, bought it probably 2 years ago?
Maybe 4.
No, not that long ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is 4 years ago. I did buy a monitor with the idea of doing it in my studio because I was in the Apple store and I looked at a monitor one time and I went, my God, that's just like looking outside. So I bought a monitor. I've not done it. I'm so used, because of my ridiculous background as an illustrator, of painting from prints, that I still, and as soon as I found that Staples produces these beautiful large prints for like $1 or $1.30, something like that, I started using those, and I will switch over. I know that working from a monitor is better. Like I said, I am what many people call a dinosaur, meaning that I work the old-fashioned way.
Just something you're used to.
I've worked from my little laptop in my apartment when I was in Italy a couple times. I didn't like it, but that might have been the fact that I was just working from my laptop and not working from a good. Because I know guys that work in the monitor that do just gorgeous. Brian Blood works in the monitor and does spectacular paintings from it, and I don't. Okay, just playing around, probably playing a little too much. Got to get more serious. Time to get serious here. Let's get this big thing laid in. Let's get, because really within about 35 minutes, I want to have everything laid in here within the next 35 minutes. Maybe fast, maybe sooner. If I could do it sooner, I'd sure be happy. And I want to be happy. Architecture strokes. See that? Control. There's no sense of going crazy because for me, architecture doesn't have those kind of edges. So I use a different kind of a stroke. Makes sense, huh? Hopefully. I hope a lot of the commentary that I give does make sense to you guys. And if it doesn't, what I actually hope is that you question me. Just don't make fun of me. But you can question me all you want. Get some darks here and some lights, because that defines that turquoise. I might even make that even a little bit brighter. It might be kind of fun, but I want to stay on this dark side that I'm using this umber and ultramarine together. And I mixed up a little bit more and went just a tad darker. And what I'm going to do is hit the bottom of this. It sticks out further. And then we're going to hit this whole plane in. Look how dry that is. That just, you know what that means? That means I don't have enough medium in the paint. Now watch. All I did is add a little bit of safflower oil. Just a little bit of safflower oil. Look at the difference. I didn't need a lot. If I put a lot in there, it's going to be too soupy. So wet that it's going to be damn near impossible to paint into. Okay, so I want to get a little bit of an up tilt here, perspectively. And for that, I have this crummy stick that has got paint on it that I've probably been using for 10 years. And what I do is I'll just lay this down sometimes just for expedient. I'll paint freehand if I'm on location, but if I'm in the studio, sometimes I'll just do this kind of stuff so that I get a little bit more of a straight line. And I see that's too dark there. I want it dark right there, but I want a little bit lighter. So I'm going to add a little titanium buff to that same color. And I'm actually going to warm it up with a little bit more umber. Titanium buff and umber, same color I was using. Let's see what this looks like. Not enough, a little more titanium buff. I want to be able to show off some texture in here. So that feels better. Add a little medium to it so it flows better. And we'll hit it there. Up here. Over here. You know, I shouldn't even try and save. I was trying to save the drawing. Stupid mistake. An amateur mistake.
Why?
Because it takes too much time, and then I've got to try and butt colors up neatly to other colors. And that just wastes time. And you lose a little bit of the beauty and the spontaneity of your painting by doing that kind of stuff. Now watch, a little dark. Look at that wonderful dark accent right there. Just like underneath. I can bring that down a little bit further. And then there's some darks. So what I can do later is I can take a different brush and I can put almost a little linear work in, provided my paint is wet enough, which it wasn't there. But if you watch, just leave it alone. So we have a little indication of some of that shadow detail. You don't have to use this all the time. It's a mall stick is something that many artists use, and this is kind of a mall stick, but I'm wasting too much time with it, so I'm going to kind of go freehand. Cross my fingers and go freehand. And if I get kind of a wavery look, it's okay. As long as I don't just have a wavery look. If you have it in one area is where it looks like you've really messed up. If you just have kind of a real wavy, everything else is crisp, and all of a sudden this one area is just super rough and sloppy, then you got a problem. But if you're kind of that way throughout, you're pretty good. You're okay. So take it there. We hit that little, these are kind of drawing marks that I want to hit. And now this is just a little bit lighter than this because it's facing. So, see, I added white to it. White kept it kind of blue. So now I'm adding some more umber. So I keep it in that warmer range. Let's just test. Okay, that feels pretty good. It feels like it could be warmer. So I'm gonna add a little bit more umber to it. There we go. And I can actually take that little bit of warmth. Let's see what happens. No, I can push it a little further, a little bit lighter. Let's try it one more time. There's a little piece of light right here. Okay, leave it alone. All right, let's go for this lighter area, all right? This area right in here. Now, that is more of an unbleached titanium. So I can almost use that color directly. Put some medium in it, and I can see right now it's too light. So it tends to have a little warmth. So I'll put a little, maybe umber and a little bit of ochre to it. And I'm going to test it. I'm going to stand back for a second, and it feels pretty good. So let's try it. Once I put a test down, then I'm going to put the, now it feels too light. As soon as I put enough of it down, I could go, whoops, mess that up.
So Anna wants to know, do you think your brush stroke is the direct expression of your brain, not just your feelings?
Yeah. Never been asked that question, but my initial answer is yep. It's your brain based on your experience. So I need to put a caveat on that. It's not just your brain. It's like you just can't say, oh, I need to do this, because you may intellectually be able to be correct, but physically you may not have developed the appropriate amount of necessary skill for that to work. Hope that makes sense. It does to me. That's crummy. A little bit lighter as it moves to the right. What's happening is each one of these planes, and that's a studio stroke. What I just did there, you can see I was a lot more careful. And that's what happens when you do studio paintings. You're just more careful with your strokes. And sometimes, truthfully, sometimes I'm too careful. And I realize later on, I don't like it as much. I like the frenzy that for lack of a better word, that I might end up doing when I paint more direct. Okay, let's keep going here. Want to get it. It's a little bit darker. It's a water stain, by the way, in case you're wondering what that is. This area right here, it's kind of brown. It has a little bit of brown. I just put too much blue into the color, but it's a little darker. It's more like this if you look at it. And it's a water stain. So it kind of has an erratic edge. And what it is, the water that comes out here, there's a catch basin here, and it splashes up. And so that's why it's all darker in here than it is in here. All right. And it's kind of neat. I love things that give character, texture. I tend to gravitate towards those kinds of subjects, whether they're reflections or whether they're physical texture, physical things like aging, weathering, and things. That creates it. That's why I kind of painting these beautiful old buildings in Venice. I love to do because of what we would call the patina of that building, the beautiful coloration and history that building has acquired through history. Okay. So far, let's keep going. We're going to move that right down into there. And I'm going to take that same kind of color. It's getting a little dry, so I added a little terp this time. And why? Because I felt like it was getting thick. And so the terp will thin it out just a little bit. And it's a feeling. And that's where your brain does one thing, but your touch, because of your experience, does another thing. It tells you, oh, I got to thin it out a little bit more. My God, I need to use terp as opposed to linseed. So you're going to, as the more you paint, the more you're going to acquire these things. It's memory muscle. That's the word. My God. It's memory muscle. That's what you're developing. I don't know why I left that alone. What a stupid thing to do. I'd rather have a tone in and then correct the tone later than leave it vacant. And I hope that makes sense to all of you. Okay, let's go down one stage below, and there's a little bit more blue and brown. Same color, just added blue and brown to it, so I darkened it. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit a little bit of this first plane here. It's a little bit more blue in it. And so I threw more blue. I can throw, by brown, I'm using umber, and not I could have been using the burnt sienna, but I'm using the umber. Umber's a little darker, that's why, and it's not as colorful. So rather than deal, so it's warm to cool is pretty much what I'm using all the time. Warm to cool. And we're going to get a whole front plane of these areas in, a little darker on this side than on this side. So I'm going to go a little more blue, a little more brown, which is going to darken it. It just, my ratio to white in the paint is becoming, so we're going to kind of just smack that in right now. I've got to move a little faster, so I'm going to paint like I paint in plein air. And I'll go back and get the lights in later. Blue, brown, and turp. A little bit more blue because it feels very warm. I want it dark though. There we go. Down. And I made a mark here with a ruler that I want it down in here. Maybe a little more blue in it. Let's get them all in. If I get a little modeling in there, I don't care because the stairs aren't that neat anyway. They're, they're aged, so they're not all that perfectly clean. And underneath him is shadow, and a little bit of a shadow back off of him, and down here, and then a little lighter. So I mix it right next to the color, a little bit more warm. I'm actually going to bring a little burnt sienna into it this time, so I go a little warmer. Right there, very subtle, but as accurate as I can make it. It's a lot easier sometimes to do this kind of stuff when you actually have real sunlight you're using, and not just ambient light, which is what I'm using. What ambient light just forces your values to be so much closer. Or sunlight, you get a big jump. And we get some age and texture back in here, so I can bring in. Well, I've got this color on the brush. I'm just adding a little bit of age to this area as I kind of see it, just so it's not a flat tone. One thing I don't like is when you're creating all this wonderful age and you end up with just flat tones. It's got to have some scuffing, and that's kind of, I'm just adding it. I don't do it all at once. I'll do a little now, get away from it, do a little later. So I can see in here, for example, it gets a little lighter. So I can add a little white to the color and come in and just kind of put some nice strokes in here. Texturally, it's working pretty good. I mean, the surface quality of the paint I'm getting, and I'm somewhat pleased with. I can see a lot of things that I do need. I'm going to be switching over to a smaller brush when we get into refining some of these areas. Right now, they're not all that refined. I think I can I have a nice tone starting here. It's hard to do these horizontal strokes. I can do vertical strokes a lot better than I can a horizontal stroke. I can't give you a reason for that. It's easier for me to do this than this. It might be different for you. I can only speak for myself. I'm going to lay this down here for a second because I want to. Okay, paint's not wet enough. I added terp as opposed to medium. Medium meaning still more terp. A little bit of blue, more terp.
Gamsol-ish.
Gamsol. Yeah, whenever I say terp, I'm referring, my age showing. I'm just referring to Gamsol. Good. I can see a lot of little things that need to be done in here. I'm going to abandon this for a little bit. I'm going to start on the light side here. This area, I can use almost the color I was just painting with right there. And I can start right here. And I want to blend it into that. I want to blend it into that dark color. Because it's going to get a little lighter on the edge. It's lighter still. Added more white. Try it again. That's pretty good. Let's go down. And there's some variation in there. Gets a little darker. Notice different directions of paint strokes. If you paint the same stroke, a lot of people paint down. If you do that all the time, it gets very boring. So if you come across, come down, come across, come down, keep going. It helps keep your painting interesting. I'm still working with this number 8, by the way, in case you're wondering. Still the rosemary number 8. And people have asked me many times, that is what I use this line, that is my workhorse brush, meaning I probably use that brush more than any other brush when I paint. Making those, now I'm getting those edges, meaning, see, we've created a crispness to it simply by what I did to the background. Now, take the same color with a little more blue in it. And we're going to put the backside right in here. If I can. Whoops, that's a little too dark. Let's do it again. Now I'll just do it later if I figure I need to. And here, there, there. And we'll give a little bit of differentiation, or we get a little area right here. It's a little bit darker. Okay. It's starting to make a little bit of sense. I'm going to get the right side of this guy. He's got some foliage behind him. We're going to get the guy in here, by the way. I'm going to keep my eye on the time. So I can get the character in. I want to have a good 10 to 15 minutes to kind of get into him so he isn't too underdone. It's not quite as dark of a green. And that is, by the way, I'm going to grab another brush here. There's a tree trunk back there. So I just took more umber, mixed it into the green that I was using. So it's still harmonizing. And we'll get this tree trunk coming behind this guy. And I'm going to use it and come in front of him a little bit. Okay. Now we'll take, that's all I need with that brush. We'll take this and we'll get the bushes. I'm not going to have time to fuss on those edges, so I better get them where they feel right the first time. One thing I would like to mention is it's better if you paint, I know you have lines in, and a lot of people like to paint neatly up to those lines. I try and always, in almost every class that I've ever taught, anytime, is to get people to paint over those edges. So it isn't just, now I'm going to take this, and there's a bus here of some sort. I'm going to bring that foliage, I'm not going to have it stop behind him. I'm going to actually bring it out on the other side of him. And maybe we'll bring it down here. Because I don't want to put that bus in. I don't want to put the vehicle back there, just to me gets in the way. So now we got some bushes back behind that guy. All right, let's make sure I have this down where I want it. So I don't end up with these little spots of, if I do end up with spots of background color, at least that's not white. It's one of the nice things about working on a kind of a neutral gray. If it's a red, it would probably stand out and it might really get in the way. But because it's kind of so neutral, it'll work. Now, this is kind of a gray, blue, brown kind of a color. It's just a curb. And it's about here. And I can actually use that same color with a little bit more warmth in it for the top. I just realized I probably had that stick in your face of these steps there as it comes down the front of the step, as it goes over on this part of the step. As comes next to him, and then a little bit lighter still. So I'm going to throw a little bit more of the, it's probably not lighter. There we go. Around his shoes and on the front part of that step right there.
So Anna wants to know, how do you make an object with hard edges curved like that fountain base?
What are you talking this?
Maybe, or the base of the fountain.
Well, this isn't necessarily, this is kind of octagon shape. It goes here, here, and eventually it goes back, and it goes back here. So just kind of keep that in your head that that's happening. I mixed a little bit of I just felt like right now it felt cold and I wanted to bring a little more warmth. So I threw some, what do you call it, into it? You don't know what I mean by what do you call it? Alizarin crimson. So he's shaping up. One thing I want to do real quick, and then we'll kind of get into hopefully beginning to refine it. I'm about 5 minutes behind where I'd like to be. Just because I know kind of how long this is going to take. So I took blue and I took white and I mixed it into kind of, now it's coming out kind of too green. So what that means, I need a little red in it. So I'm going to throw just a hint of alizarin, and that'll kill the green characteristic. Okay, that's not light enough. I want to get that base ground plane in. And a little bit more violet. And for violet, I'm just throwing a little bit of that red into it. That's maybe still a little on the green side. This is going to be too violet, but I'm going to mix it in with that color. There we go. Terp. The more terp I have into this, the faster it's going to spread. Of course, it'll run if I get too much terp into it. Some people like runs. I truthfully don't really care one way or the other. If I get little drips and they seem to work, I'll leave them. If I get little drips and they don't seem to work, I'll wipe them out. Look at that drip. Oh, it's because I'm pressing that brush hard. It's because that means I'm putting down a lot of what's on the brush. And a lot of what's on the brush is terp or Gamsol. So we're getting that ground plane looks like it's actually pretty good. Now it's darker here, it gets lighter and warmer here. So I'm going to take some white and a little bit of alizarin, and we're going to lighten that up over here. Not a lot, maybe a little bit more alizarin. What do you say? Let's try it in any event, just so it doesn't get too dull. I hate paintings get so dull. That's too strong. That if I mix it into the paint, it may work. And we'll just work the paint back and forth until you get what you want. That's it. Leave it alone. Down behind that, there's some, the blankets and stuff hanging. That's what it is, because there's some darks, really neat little dark shapes, just kind of abstract. So there's a little dark shape right here. Kind of shows the fountain off. Yeah, I can see they're like towels and I don't know what they are. A little bit down here, a little abstracty kind of crud. And there's one that's a little more red. So I'm going to take, say, burnt sienna instead of alizarin. And let's try this. This might be too strong, but let's try it. No, I don't mind it. Came out better than I thought. Good guess. Wow. All right. For right now, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to go much further with it. And there's some, looks like other types of tables. Sometimes I just look at it and say abstract shapes. So that's what I'm going to do. It's the tone. It's an abstract tone. And maybe a little bit of piece of light kind of coming down in there. Let's leave that alone. Little piece kind of coming back. Okay, that's too strong. Good. Okay, leave it alone. Let's get this in. I'm going to switch down to my smaller, my number 8. And the top is receiving skylight, ambient light from the sky. So I can keep it very cold, very blue. So the ultramarine, the white, and just maybe a hint of lavender. That's pretty good. So my stroke in architecture is neater generally than it is if I'm doing foliage. It's a different kind of stroke. So what I've done is I've created the top of this ivory piece. I'm using that word loosely. It's ivory in color. And side of it. And the front of it is almost the same value, maybe a bit lighter, but warmer, but not real warm. So I'm kind of mixing up a similar color that I was using back here, but not quite as bright. It's a little too bright there. Let's try it one more time. Nope. I got too much dirt into the paint. There we go. Probably a little lighter than that, but you know, I always like to start out a little safer so that I can always go a little lighter if I need to. Mix a little bit more Naples into it. Whoops. That's how you do it at crisp edge, you guys. Take your finger and smack it. Okay. And there's a little sculptural face on that. We're right in the center. It's right about here, just a little bit darker. And I already had kind of a brownish color mixed up somewhere in my palette, so I just use that. It's kind of a dirty color anyway. It's not, I don't want a clean, specific color there. Let's just indicate activity there. There's a truck back here, but I'm going to bring the building down, or I'm going to bring foliage over. So let's start with the building down. If I don't like it, I'll bring foliage over. And what that means is slightly warm. I should have put that in earlier, and I didn't, because I didn't see it. Oh, because the truck was there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to hit right in here. And I think I'm going to put more foliage to pop that little top notch. Okay, feels better. Let's start in kind of in here on the figure, and then we'll go back and worry about refining. Okay. First things first, this ground plane right here, unbleached titanium and blue together. Let's see what that comes up. That's too light. Let's try it one more time. It's still a little too light. I'm just mixing it into the colors I already have on my, that's a little bit better. Probably a little warmer than I want, but it's still neutral enough where it's not feeling too like it doesn't belong. I should have hit right in there and I didn't already. So we're going to hit a little bit of that, a little bit on this stair. Here, here. And then there's a, looks like there's a wet trough right in here. Kind of cool. It's kind of a cool color. So I don't mean cool by like it's really neat, really bitchin'.
Oh, geez.
It's cool. Cool in temperature. Nothing in this painting is that bitchin'. At present. Let's make it, let's do that at the
Now
end.
you're really showing your age.
Huh?
So now you're really showing your age. It's groovy.
Now, groovy would be if I did psychedelic prints all over it, then it would be groovy. And I haven't done psychedelic prints yet. I just noticed the perspective thing I didn't like. So I always correct those things. This is down, this needs to come down further. So just took the blue and the brown together, put it in my brush, added the terp, and brought it down. And one last thing, and then we'll get into him. This goes back underneath him, right there. Probably a little lighter, probably cheat it, get a little bit lighter there. Okay. There's a little bit of a red curve back there too, but it's darker. It's right here. And we'll leave that alone. Now let's get the guy. I need a smaller brush for him. So let me see what I've got handy here. I've got an Egbert. I don't want that. Like a number 4, if I can find one. I think this is going to do. Nope. So I'm going to spend about 10 minutes looking for a brush. Here we go. All right, let's get his outfit in. That's pretty good for a start, just a start. He's going to get a lot more light on his back, but that gives me a nice neutral base to work off of, kind of the mid-tone. Maybe it's a touch dark, so I'm just going to lighten it. I had another color on my palette. I was able to come in, lighten it. Oh, nice mass. Now, he's got light hair. I'm going to use, I wasn't going to. And then I thought, you know what? Because I've got that dark tree, come to think of it, I am going to make his hair a little darker. I'm going to give him dark hair. He's an Italian, by God. Not that they're not Italians with light hair. But and I'll just put a light on the top of his head to separate it from the tree. And get a little light on it. And if I don't like it, I'll lighten it. I got to go smaller. It's too small. What do I got here? What do I got here? Okay. I'm just going to take the small brush. I'm going to mix a flesh tone. The burnt sienna, a little bit of blue and white. Cool it off. Don't want it too hot to begin with. Ear first. Ear sits about here. Boom. Let's do it again. Kind of crumbs. There we go. And now we'll get basically a flesh tone in his neck. Forehead. Paint shapes. Start with a nice shape. Okay, a little bit of a shadow where his neck is. Get a little bit of modeling up under his ear. And as long as we have the color, let's throw an eye socket in so we have it placed. So we almost have a head now. Okay. Let's get into his pants, which we're going to make dark. And we're going to use the shadow and the pants as a unit. And I'm going to go pretty dark. I use the blue and the brown together. I am going to switch, I think, to this. I should have done his arms at the same time, and I didn't. The front of his shirt. Okay, he's lighter at top. Also, I need to cut in on his back right there. I can see right now, and a lot of wrinkles and activity. So I'm going to stand back a little bit. And this, I wish I was using my filbert right now, but I'm not. I will pick it up in a little bit, and hopefully improve upon some of these areas. Now the back, his backside and his pants become quite dark. So I want to go almost as dark as I can go, but I've already got a little bit of residue in this brush. So I know it's not going to be as black as, so if I want to go darker at the end, I still can. And a little bit more medium, and I can get a few more wrinkles into his shirt. I have too much light right there. That's way too much light. Way too much light. All right, let's get his pants in. A bigger brush. No sense in using a small brush. We're trying to cover territory here. And that shadow links to his pants. And his other leg is back about here. And he has a little bit of light on from his shirt right about there. It's working okay. I'm not crazy about it, but it's not terrible. It's kind of in that range where I can live with it. When you're doing quicker paintings, that last line that I use, I can live with it, is almost the mantra that you're going to be using. Because in quicker paintings, generally, you find that you cannot sit there and work and work and work until everything's perfect. You get as close as you can and move on. And experience will get you closer each time you work. So first time you work, you may go, I kind of got it, but I didn't get it. Second time you do it, you're going to get a little better. Third time, better, and so forth. You're going to just keep improving. You will have setbacks. So it's not 100% constant improvement. It's improvement. Uh-oh, I messed up. And then more improvement. And uh-oh, I messed up again. But in the long term, you will improve. Hands. So I painted those two arms together. He has a thumb that sticks out. So we did a little stroke like that. And then his hands. And then his hands go into shadow. And I've already got that shadow right here. So we're gonna leave, that guy's gonna leave him alone for a little bit as soon as I get the front of his pants done, which is very similar to his shirt color. Maybe I can make it a little warmer or a little, actually it's a little cooler now that I look at it. So I just add a little more blue to that same color. And we'll take his pants right here, kind of blend them in a little bit. But when I say blend, you're just adding 1 or 2 additional strokes on top, which will take and kind of mush the colors together. Front of his pants a little lighter. We'll just push it together. And then his other pant leg back there has got a little bit of light on it. Right there. And down in that part. So a couple things. I want to recarve his back with the background. Still darker. I just keep going darker, just keep adding blue and brown together or blue and green until I get the density of darkness that I want. All right. Now I'm going to take, I think what I'm going to do, I just noticed this, I think I bring this foliage like, so it's up here. Okay. So I'm going to take his back. I'm going to add some white and some blue. And a little bit more white. Because I can see it get pretty light right about on his shoulder, right about, whoop, too light. Let's try it again. There we go. There. And a little bit right. Whoops. A little gop of white on there I didn't need. And just, whoops, I got it into his neck. That's what happens when you paint a little too fast. Okay. Tennis shoes, nice dark tennis shoes. Sneakers, whatever you want to call them.
So that was an interesting question from Anna. Do you distinguish while painting something to look light struck as opposed to wet looking, or you just don't?
Explain that. I'm not sure about what you mean by white versus
light
versus wet struck.
Yeah. So if,
what do you mean by wet struck?
I think the wetness of from the fountain, from the water, or the light.
Nothing has. Just remember, nothing has got extreme light on this. Nothing. Everything is more ambient lit as opposed to bright lit. So I think I'm going to need to bring some more foliage back behind. That's feels a little better. He still doesn't feel very good right now. And I need a little bit more definition, either the darkening the back of the shirt to clarify his gesture. That works a little. I don't want to spend too much time. I want to keep moving on back to the fountain now because I'm further behind than I wanted to be. So let's get on that fountain. I've got about 20 minutes, maybe 25. And I was hoping I would have 30 at this point. Just to let you know, that's about how far behind I think I am from where I would like to be. I grabbed a filbert, by the way, here, you guys. So I hit a little bit of light on there. I've got to do this stuff, and I'm going to need my mall stick, I think, for this to really get what I'm after. First things first. Let's clarify this tone. It's quite a bit brighter. Feels good. Now, a little bit more warmth, so I'm going to throw some ochre into that color. More ochre. And I'm going to rest this as a mall stick and paint like this. That's okay. Feel like I need to get a little brighter at the end. And as it goes to the left, it just goes colder. So what I did is I mixed a little white and blue together. So I kept the same value, but I let it get colder as it moved over to the left. I hope you can see that. It's pretty subtle. The top, the same thing. So when I've got that color mixed up, use it, hit it, stroke over it. If you stroke over it more than once, you start pushing the colors together and you darken it. And it's got some textural, so I can pick any of the browns or any of these other kind of colors I already have up in here and add some of the character and busyness to this. I just don't want to spend a lot of time on it, because if I do, I really won't get the overall feeling in there. While I've got that, I can use this light to clarify the fountain a little bit. There. Okay. Pretty good. I could do a lot of little negative painting in here. Okay, let's get the top the same way. As it goes to the right, remember, it warms up. And it stays similar in value. So I can take that same color, bring it to the right. I get a little bit, you got to understand, there's a little bit of perspective going on here, you guys, because I'm looking more up at this one than I am at this one. Now, the edge, I knew I was going to save this. The edge of this gets lighter. And that's why I said I kind of laid that in as a mid-tone. And we lay it in light, and we soften it in. So we start to get more volume in that. I can bring a little more cool to that now if I want. And I can begin to distinguish. Whoops, not light enough. There's a lot of subtlety in here. This plane from the plane below. And as it moves over into the shadow, I'm probably blocking you, and if I am, I'm sorry. So we have a little bit, I put those strokes in to give a little bit of what we would call shadow detail. In other words, you can see a little bit into the shadow, but this dark has to come all the way over to here. All right. Now, I'm going back up to this part of the fountain, and I see a little bit of the lip and then a little bit of a lip below it. So I'm going to be putting, yep, this is where all the subtlety comes in. And this is why sometimes ambient light becomes really tricky. You got to get it, just hit that right in between value. Okay, that looks like it's going to do it. So let's, so we're starting to give a little bit of dimension to that. I want to get a little bit more light on that part of the fountain. And I can clean up edges later. Edges, sharpening and crispening up edges are not difficult, where softening is a lot more tricky. There's the top of that. I want to carry that all the way over. I really want to have about 5 minutes to go back into that figure if I can, and give him a little bit more snap. Let's go into this right in here. So we get a little bit of a pull there. It gets lost, comes over about here. And we get a little bit of a indication of that indentation right there. I can see a little bit of it more here. I see a little curve. Interesting. These are almost calligraphic marks. I'm going to take one of these small brushes like my liner, because I think it'll work better. That's why. And we're going to kind of come in and we're going to hit some drawing marks there. I want to take some light and put it right there and there. Take a little bit in between the size brush. Here, let's grab something real quick. I grab whatever my hand touches. Small filbert. How's that? Okay. Perspectives are off. Right there. Correct it there. Correct it there. That's better. I went a little darker. It needed it. I threw up. It's a little umber mixed in with it as well. It just darkened it a little bit. Okay. Real subtle stairs. This sort of perspective's important here. You want to go here. Hopefully you guys can see it. And I'm not blocking too much. Try not to. But and that light area, that catch bin, because we're going to end up, the last thing I'm going to do in this is add water. And I got to mix that color down, so I don't want it that light, but I do need to indicate some of the stairs. I indicated one, and I have to keep the perspective correct. So we're indicating from that stair, we're going into this stair. And we're going to start right here. And that's good enough. It feels about right. That's all you can go for. Just going for the feeling. And bottom stair. And bottom stair is not as thick as the others. Interesting. And it's going to come from about here. Okay. Let's take the same kind of colors. Let's move them this way. First, let's hit the top stair. And we actually have the surface of the stair. So we're going to go more of this. Push it once, push it twice, because it was actually coming out too light. And then the water starts, okay? And we'll take the second stair. Color's not right, but the value is right. And we'll, 1, 2. And then the bottom stair. And it's going to come all the way over to here, to this point. Right about there. So we got the 3 stairs in. They're pretty good. There's a lot of problems, but that's as good as I'm going to get. Architecture just takes longer, everybody. Foliage, things like that, you can get in a lot quicker because you're indicating, and you don't have to be accurate to what it's like. When you do with architecture, you always have to deal with perspective. The proportion has to be relatively correct. So if there's a lot more to consider when you're doing any things that deal with architecture, as a fountain is architecture, by the way, in case you were wondering. You're probably saying, what does he mean architecture? It's a fountain. Well, a fountain is architecture. Architecture is mechanical, organic versus mechanical, where trees are organic, bushes are organic. Architecture is mechanical.
What brush were you using? Sorry.
Just a small, probably a number 2 or 3 long bristled filbert, or an egbert, if you will. So hopefully I'm getting the feeling of the accuracy of that fountain. I'm going to take the back side of this fountain, add a little bit of light to it, a little bit of top light right there. Probably a little more than I need. But beggars can't be choosers at this point. He needs some work. I want to get a little bit of this perspective in. So we're going to kind of take a little bit of light here and indicate a little bit of perspective. 1, whoops, 2, 3, 4. Now, clean it up. Clean brush. I lost my brush. Huh. Oh, here it is. Just a little bit of indication there. Here. Let's go into the figure, go back into the foliage, then finish with the water. Foliage first. Big brush. My number 12, green, ochre. And we're going to put some lights. Not light enough. I'll put some maples into it. Let's try this. There we go. Little architectural indication in the background. There's a window. Right about here, there's a shutter. Up here. There's a red doorway back there. There's another shutter right here. All right. Take some of the greens. A lot of green, a lot more green right in there. You have to have enough medium in your paint so it sits on top. So you're not brushing it into the color that's there. A little bit variation in that. So if there's more ochre into that same color. So it's not the same green everywhere. Now you can also go back with darks. If I look at this and I say I need some darks back in here, I can, because the green that I put up was not as dark or as light. So I can take brown and blue together, which are about as dark as I can go. And I can go back and push some darker darks, give even more dimension to this thing. And I like paint. I like layering paint like this, where I don't just constantly come light. Sometimes I go back dark on top. Sometimes I go back light on top. And I may go back dark, light, many times to capture the illusion of, particularly on foliage. Now, when I'm doing anything weathered like the fountain, I would do the same kind of thing. I would go back into, say, this area and let's mix up a new color and see what happens. I don't like that color, it's too light. But I could probably come in and add, so we get some color variation. So and it's warm to cool generally. It's not just warm, it's not just cold. So you do a little warm, you do a little cool. You work back and forth until you get the right mixture, the right kind of feel that goes on. There's a secondary lip that I just noticed as I was just doing that on the fountain itself, right there. And if not that you have to put it in, but I'm going to try and do it. And then hit the dark below it. And I've got the dark mixed up, so it's pretty easy to do. And then so we have a little bit of that edge. Now let's go back into this guy for a little bit. I'm gonna take my small little brush into him, and I'm gonna just model a little bit. And I'm gonna do that. A lot of that's based on knowledge. It's not necessarily based on, I mean, I am observing, but I can see, for example, he's a little bit lighter right here. And for that, if I need to lighten it up, I just use a little Naples. It's a little lighter on where his nose goes in. Right there, it's a little too light probably. On his ear, his cheekbone. It's probably a little lighter than I need to be. And I would just brush it in. If it's too light when you put it on, just stroke it 2 or 3 times and you'll get it to where you want it. I can see it on the top of his arm. It's quite a bit lighter. Front of his bicep. Top of his hand, where his thumb is. So pretty much what you're doing at this point is you're just refining. Back on his chin. So he starts to have a little bit more depth. Looking at his shirt, I would do the same kind of thing, starting with pushing some of the darks. For example, the dark up on his sleeve, bring it up a little higher. He has a hood back here. And a little bit of dark creeping up here. You don't want to overdo it. You just want to indicate these areas as directly as you can, and not sit there and brush the hell out of it until it overblends. And here. Now this is where you take this brush and you just slop it. So you just, instead of using it as an exactness, you're just kind of pushing some paint around. Now, last thing I'm going to do right now, I think I'm going to try and do that water. I'm going to do it in 2 stages. Number 1, a darker stage, and number 2, I'm going to put brights on it. And we're going to keep it in the blue range, and we'll start kind of in here. I can almost use a little bit of that background color. And we're going to let a splash come down, a little bit more of a splash. All right, and I'm doing that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same color, and I'm going to let that splash comes down, hits this. It's also going to come over here. And maybe a little bit here, maybe a little bit right there. And then I'm going to do it a little bit over this. I think before I do that, I'm going to hit an edge that I just happen to notice. Okay. Same kind of color. You got to have a lot of medium in your brush. And in this case, by medium, I mean damsel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and let this kind of splash. I don't want to space them too equally. Okay. let's let this come from here, come down. There we go, let's pick up. That's too much. Okay, now let's take more of a white in that same blue. And let's do a little bit of the splash as it goes up the top. Okay, we got a little bit of that going. I don't want to do too much of it. Too much. If you get too much in, just take it out. Literally, you put it in, you take it out. It's really what it comes down to. It's trial and error. Is it working? Is it not working? Have I done way too much? Okay, I'm gonna leave that. Now let's do it here. This has got a little bit of pipe. I'm 5 minutes over. Sorry, guys. I usually watch the time much more carefully. I looked at this and I said, well, it's not that complex. And as I got into the painting, I'm going, crap, there's a lot of little stuff going on. And it's primarily because it's architecture, really. That's the main reason that this is taking longer. The more architecture you get into, just the longer it's going to take. That's good. Now, I picked this brush up and I had, oh, there it is, the water. A lot more white, more of the white color. It isn't pure white. It's white mixed into that blue. A lot of medium in that brush. Wipe my hand off. Where does it come from? It comes from here. And where does it go to? Here. So it's going to go. I almost got it. More white this time. I just mixed more white into the same color. It's a little bit thicker. I'm going to be a little bit bolder here if I can. So you're laughing?
Steve just said that you tackle things that would make a sane person run like hell.
You're thanks, Steve. You're recognizing my insanity. I like to try things sometimes just to see if I can pull it off. This one, I'm not sure. Kind of tackled a little bit more, maybe. There's a lot of little things. I'm just going to point them out, and then I may touch them up after we get off. But it's like I want to add a little bit more to the top of this right here. All I did is, and I like the erratic quality that I'm getting by doing freehand as opposed to using that. So it helps rounds it. It helps gives it more of a top light. I see as I move into steps like this, I could probably go and add a little bit more definition here and here and on the side as it comes down. Add a little bit more perspective in it. I can see the same thing going on here. I could easily do it here, here, even a little bit there. All these finger marks are messing up. They don't bother me a lot. They bother me a little bit. I'm not real pleased with what I did here, so I'm just going to smear it out, fuzz it, and then maybe put it back in a little bit better later because it's a little flat. I also think this can come forward and darken a little bit. I like the little stupid marks I've got in there because they actually work. Very last thing is probably on the figure. This is what he could probably use a heck of a lot more work. Maybe I'll do a little bit after lunch, get something to eat and do a little bit more on him. It's not about him. He's just kind of part of this this painting. He's in the picture, but it's not necessarily about it. Don't like the hump on his back. I think I have it too severe. And for that, I can take the background color, which is this, and just kind of recorrect. Still don't like him, but I'm going to leave him alone for right now. And hopefully I'll get him working a little bit better without doing a lot of work on him, because it's not that he needs a lot of work. He needs a little bit to clarify it. Don't like that shoulder at all. I think I could add a little bit of indication. Nope, a little lighter. Back in the window, just so you feel it. Same in here, it's a shutter. And last but not least, I always play with a palette knife. I just think it's a good tool to do certain things with, and a lot of times just hit some negative spots in these trees.
A lot looser when you come up close to it.
Huh?
It's a lot looser when you come up close. I didn't realize it from
Oh, it's very loose. It's
sitting back there.
Yeah. Well, the quicker I paint, the looser I paint. But if this were a studio painting, I would really refine quite a bit. I really go into here and get some, like I see that edge. I missed that whole base part of this part of the fountain right here. There is a little base right there, and I missed it. And so there's a lot of little things I can really so easily add into this if I put the time in. And I'm not going to, truthfully, even as I'm going to keep the integrity of almost the plein air look if I can. And anyway, hopefully you guys got the gist of the concept of how to paint something like this, even though it's not as refined as maybe some of the others appear to be. It actually isn't any much less. It's just that because it's architecture, it tends to, architecture shows if you don't, if you lose some of the accuracy. I notice I lost some of the cool information in his shoes. Okay, that's about it. The figure I'd work on a little bit. Some of the stuff up in here is okay. I think I could add one more layer of light to the top of this, kind of like I did down below.
Of the fountain or the water?
No, of the fountain itself.
Okay.
Just one more layer to make the top just a little bit lighter. You know, because I laid the first part in, but you can actually build on that and create something even more interesting. That's about it.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Man,
Whoopsie.
those are dirty hands. Hopefully you get something out of this. It's a little bit looser than some of the others, but I think I could brighten up. So what you're going to see me do when I post this is I'm going to brighten up all the top surfaces a little bit, just a little more than they are. I think they could stand a little bit of a punch. And then I might do a little bit of work on him. We'll see. But for right now, it's lunchtime. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tim.